I named, some of you guys might have seen the title for tonight's talk is Yin and Yang, and I purposefully left it very general because I'm sure I'm going to go in like 100 different directions with this thing. But the general idea is inspired by the challenge of the week. The challenge of the week is, I said in the last couple of weeks that one of the ones we did recently is the most challenging, but this is the actual most challenging challenge. This one is very simple. Every time you have a negative thought, you are to have 3 positive thoughts. And we're not leaving this up to chance like, I feel like I'm a pretty generally positive person, so I'm just going to assume that I'm having 3 positive thoughts. No, I mean, you recognize that you're having a negative thought, and right now, you cause 3 positive thoughts. And there's a lot behind this. The general idea is like, I read an article at some point a couple of years ago which said that on average, in general, human beings have about 3 times as many negative thoughts, or we are at least kind of aware of or like attached to 3 times as much negativity and negative thought as positive thoughts. And there's a great reason for this. Evolutionarily speaking, it makes sense that if you're walking around on the savannah, it's much more important to be aware of the saber-toothed tiger over here that could kill you than it is to be aware of how nice and sunny of a day it is, because being aware of one of those things is going to save your life and therefore cause you to keep passing your genes on and all that stuff. And it's interesting because, like many things that served us really well in the past, we have to recognize that, to a certain extent at least, it's not really helping us. It's kind of overkill. And in this case, I would say that the stress of always focusing on the threats that we perceive, or even the actual threats, if you're focusing on them too much, causes you to be so negative and stressed that it is more likely to kill you than if you just ignored them. So, and that's to an extent, obviously. If you're walking across the street and you're unaware of the possible threat of getting hit by a car, and therefore you don't look 2 ways, then something bad happens to you. But there is an idea here of, like I've talked about in the recent past, the difference between thriving and surviving. And somebody was asking about, I think it was Tanya actually asking me about this earlier today, where it's like the question of the week is actually about, do I ask for what I need? And she was asking, like, well, what does it mean to need something? Because there's plenty of stuff that I kind of want, or maybe on some level I think of it like I need it, but on the other hand, I can tell that I don't actually really need this thing to survive. It's what I would need to thrive or to progress in the way that I want to. And I think that this is totally true. So when you're looking at it in these terms, there are things that you could certainly say we could all agree on. We need these things to survive. You need water, you need air, and you need some food. And besides that, not a lot else, right? And then there's a whole bunch of stuff on the other end of the spectrum that you may want, but you don't need. I was using the example of a cookie in the kids' class, because you might want cookies all the time, but you don't really need them. And if that's always what you're bothering people about, they're eventually going to get tired of listening to you. There's plenty of stuff that you may want, but our practice and our meditation is on some level really about living in reality and realizing what we do need versus what we just want. And you can make the decision, and should make the decision, that I'm not just interested in surviving, I am interested in thriving. So what is beyond just the bare level of survival that I need? Well, I don't just need water and air, I need broccoli to thrive because I want to be healthy. I could probably live for a long time on cookies, but broccoli is really at the next level of not just surviving, but feeling healthy and, living the kind of life that I want to live. And in the same way, you might find that there are things that you don't necessarily need from other people, but you can ask for them still. This is, again, talking about the question of the week, do I ask for what I need? You can ask for them because they will help you to achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve, or thrive in the way that you're trying to thrive, in a way that is way above and beyond what you could do otherwise. So the example I used earlier today was, I don't need somebody else to make the website for the dojo, because I'm sure I could sit there for a long, long time, years, to figure out how to code and make a website and all that stuff. The website would probably still suck, but I could say, I did it. I didn't need anybody else. Damn it, I made a website. And that is one way of doing it, but you could also realize, hey, I could ask somebody who's really great at making websites, and I could pay them a little bit of money, or they could do it out of the goodness of their heart, and I could end up with something much better, much faster, and that is going to help me to accomplish the things that I'm trying to accomplish, right? Because I'm not just trying to accomplish someday having students. I'm trying to accomplish right now, and a lot of students, and giving them the best possible experience. So we can recognize that there are some things that might be kind of a gray area of, I don't necessarily need this from somebody else, but I can ask because it is going to be such a big help. It is going to be so beneficial. And what I always like to think about when you think about the idea of needing something and asking somebody for help, one of the first thoughts that come up for a lot of us is, I don't want to ask for help because I don't want to bother that person. And on some level, it's like, I don't feel like I'm worth the help. I'm worried, actually, that if I ask for help, I'm going to get rejected, and I'm going to prove to myself how worthless I really am. If that's the line of thought, and you got to be really self-aware to recognize that this is what's going on in your head, then you want to just go for it and ask for help. And sometimes you'll fail, and the person's going to reject you, and sometimes you'll get more than you kind of expected from people. So I'm a big fan of, in general, making people big and expecting big things from people, and not necessarily needing it and not necessarily counting on it, but operating with the hope and the possibility that people around me can be giants rather than being the tiny people that I usually expect them to be. So when you ask somebody for what you need, you might be surprised in a positive way. So back to the main kind of thrust of the talk here is positive versus negative. The idea of the ratio should be kind of simple or to understand, because we naturally have 3 times as many negative thoughts as positive thoughts. So this is something that we want to kind of remedy. And you can do this by having more positive thoughts than you're used to having. And this will not lead you to, I'm sure that this is not a thought that most of you guys are having, because you're like, yeah, I know, I'm kind of negative and I need to have more positive thoughts. But if you're me, you are always worried about being too positive, because that's me. I'm not interested in myself or you or anybody just purely being positive, because that's not living in reality either. It's not reality to only see the negative, and it's not reality to only see the positive. What is reality is to recognize the balance and what is truly happening. So I had a great question last night. So this question was actually kind of specifically about a cartoon show that, if you guys haven't watched it as martial artists or fans of martial arts, you should watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon, not the movie. The cartoon is really spectacular. And the student was asking me about this idea of the main character, no spoilers, but he sets out to master these different forms of what they call bending, which is basically like martial arts. You can think of it that way. And it's really cool because whoever researched the way of movement, they studied a lot of traditional Chinese martial arts and did a really great job of representing that on the screen. And so water bending looks just like Tai Chi, and air bending looks just like Bagua, and they've got harder styles and more like acrobatic styles, and it's very cool. But the main character is told, if you are going to become the avatar and save the world, you've got to master all 4 styles. So he was already an airbender, but he's got to be able to do earth, fire, and water as well. And so the student was asking me, like, what do you think of this? Like, is this a good philosophy? Does it apply to our practice and in life? And I said, of course, because if it's on Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's real. But it is absolutely true in our physical practice. You guys see this because most styles of martial arts are very kind of in tunnel vision. They do one thing and they do it really well, but that's all that they do. So they just grapple like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or they just do joint locks like Aikido, or they just strike like Muay Thai. What we do is it kind of takes from different styles, we do techniques that are made popular by different styles. We're rooted in a philosophy. The philosophy is basically like that. We need to be able to do what works, and we need to be able to combine principles. And Sifu Brown used to say all the time that Yuchia, our style, means hard, soft. And this is like yin and yang. There is no one without the other. There's no up without down. There's no black without white. There's no hard without soft. And if you go too hard and you're stuck there, that's a problem. If you go too soft and you're stuck there, that's a problem. And so the student last night asked me, well, how do we deal with that? And I said, what you need to do is just like the challenge of the week. If you find yourself too far balanced, off balance in one direction, you simply need to practice the other thing. And that will help you arrive at a good center place of balance. So, for example, you are constantly thinking negative thoughts. You need to practice having positive thoughts. You need to practice if you're always aware of, like, this is a drill that we've been doing in class this week in class, in Kung Fu rather. You recognize what you need to fix about your technique, and those are negative things about your technique that you can fix and make better. But then you also practice focusing on the positive, what is good about your technique already. And this is important in learning martial arts like it is in learning anything else that's very complicated and difficult and takes a long time, because obviously if you don't recognize what there's to fix, you're not going to fix it because you're not aware of it. You're just totally out of the loop. But if you never recognize the positive and what you are already doing well, then you're not going to know what to keep from your technique. You're not going to know what to keep reinforcing. And also, you're going to get overwhelmed and give up. If you have the attitude of, like, everything sucks and I'm terrible all the time, then you're not going to keep practicing martial arts. You're not going to keep doing anything long enough to get great at it without kind of setting aside a little bit of that time and mental energy to be grateful for and appreciate what is good about your practice? What is good about your meditation practice? What is good about whatever it is in life that you're trying to get that balance in? So I had another question. I had a lot of great questions this week. Another question was somebody asking me about Mushin. And this was something that I had talked about with Sifu Brown and asked him in his meditation class, but also a student asked me today. She said, Sifu, I find myself, rather than arriving in Mushin, if we think of Mushin as being the state of consciousness that you're trying to get to with your physical practice, but also with your meditation, it's a state of no mind where you are in a focused calm. You are so single-pointedly focused on one thing that all the other thoughts and even your ego melt away, and you're left with this moment, this act, this sensation. This might be in class where you're just repping that punch over and over again, and you stop thinking about what am I doing wrong. You stop judging it, and you just focus on the sensation and recognize what is perfect about this moment, this punch, is just that it is happening and it's great, and nothing really needs to be judged or fixed about it on a kind of bigger, grander scale, right? If you are attached to fixing things, you're attached in that state of mind which judges and compares, and that is the ego. It cannot get to Mushin. So the student was asking me, how do you get to Mushin? Because I feel like instead of being in a focused calm, what I get is just kind of a daydreaming, kind of like almost sleepy calm, which isn't focused, but it's also not necessarily attached to anything. And what I said was, you've got to be careful with this, because many people think that they're going to arrive at this state of Mushin or focused calm or kind of uber focus, no mind, by just letting everything go and just being totally relaxed and free with your consciousness. And it can happen, but only if you have been practicing being very focused, like a laser focus with your mind, just like your body, if you're in Mushin, is only going to do the technique correctly if you've practiced it so many times that it doesn't know how to do the technique incorrectly. Then when you let everything go, then your body will do what it is meant to do, because you've trained it to do that. If you haven't trained your mind to be focused, and then you just kind of let go of everything and you're just relaxed, kind of like, well, I'm just gonna knock a couple back and have a few drinks and see if that helps me get into Mushin, or I'm just gonna wake up in the middle of the night and be so relaxed because I'm very tired and hope that does it. That is not going to do it. And let me be clear, the student asked me about this earlier today, was not asking if she can drink her way to Mushin. But the way to get there is not just by being super relaxed. The way to get there is by being very focused and then letting everything kind of fall apart, letting everything extra fall away from you. So I love using the analogy of a sculptor making the perfect work of art. The sculptor does not take, if you're working with a block of marble, the sculptor does not take a block of marble and say, I see the perfect sculpture of a beautiful woman, and then start adding chunks of marble onto it. It doesn't happen that way. They start chipping away, and in the beginning you chip away huge chunks, and then you start chipping away smaller chunks, and then you take those finer and finer tools, and you're getting rid of everything extra until you arrive at that perfect place where there is nothing in the way. All there is that perfection. In much the same way, we have to be very focused and hone our mind and really get it to the point where it is so practiced at being focused that when we allow everything to fall away, what we're left with is that perfect state of mind. So this is back to the idea of balance, right? We cannot be too off balance in the direction of being relaxed and sleepy and, my mind's unable to focus on anything. Nor can we be too focused in the other direction where I'm tense and rigid and, like, with my mind, I'm so attached and so stressed that I'm on the other end of the spectrum. So one way that you can look at this is like the way, and I'm not saying that there is one way, but a way to get to Mushin, or the state of consciousness that we're trying to get to, is practicing balance. If you're too off balance in one direction, then you simply need to practice the other. So if you are too yin, you need to practice yang, and vice versa. If you're too hard, you need to practice soft. If you're too tense, you need to practice relaxed. If you're too relaxed, you need to practice, I don't like to say practice tense, but practice being very focused with your mind. And it is certainly true that you can take the idea of being focused in too far the other direction and be so attached to, I've got to get this right now. And if I'm not getting it, I'm screwing up my meditation, I'm screwing up my practice. And you can't force your way into Mushin. You can't force your way into any of these higher states of consciousness, because it is the very act of trying to force it that stops it from happening, right? So think of it in this way, when you're meditating tonight. Recognize where you are off balance. Recognize if you are too relaxed, sleepy, or if you are too tense, rigid, attached. And then practice the other, right? So what that looks like in meditation is, let's say that I'm too relaxed. I'm going to treat my meditation like, not like a job, but like it's life or death. And this is only for the people who are too relaxed, which is like two of us here right now. But those of you who are too relaxed, you got to treat this meditation like this is it. This is the last meditation that I will ever do in my life. And I am either so focused and present, I'm so in the moment that I get it now, or it's never going to happen for me. Now, here's what you should do for the rest of you guys who are on the other end of the spectrum. I'm too tense. I basically sit to meditate, and as soon as I have a thought, I get pissed off at myself, and I say, why am I thinking? I'm supposed to be meditating right now. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get this? You need to chill out and practice being relaxed. So treat it like a game. You are... I play video games every once in a while. You can treat it like a video game. You can treat it like a board game or whatever you people do. It's a game that you're playing with yourself, where you start off with the intention of being focused on your breath and clearing your mind. And as soon as you find it wander, the game that you're playing is I recognize it as soon as I can, and I come back to this moment. And as soon as I recognize that I'm getting all up in my head, angry, tense about it, that is something else that I play a game with, because that's just another thought. So the game is I let that go. And the game is I'm just focusing on the breath, and I try to rack up the highest score that I can by coming back to the breath as often and as quickly as I can, and by keeping it as long as I can. And when you are allowing yourself to have fun with your meditation, then you will kind of slip more easily into that state of relaxed calm. So this is the very simple idea behind this talk, and the challenge of the week is find where you are off balanced. And for most people, naturally, we have too many negative thoughts. We focus too much on that. So you practice the other end of it. You find yourself too far in this direction, so bring it back to the other direction. You are 3 times more negative, so practice being 3 times more positive. You are too, you're too lazy. You procrastinate too much. Focus, play the game, practice being way more on it, and doing what you said you were going to do as soon as you said you were going to do it. In fact, do it even before you said you were going to do it. And in this practice of recognizing where we are off balance and going the other direction, look, you're never going to arrive. Here's the key to this, is you're going to just have to find another way of driving yourself insane. If you expect yourself to be perfectly on balance, you will never actually be perfectly balanced. But you're going to find yourself, I'm too far here, and so I correct this way. I maybe overcorrect, and so I bring myself back like this. And this is like what Ueshiba Sensei said when he overheard some of his students talking about. Ueshiba Sensei, the founder of Aikido, heard his students saying, "Oh, Ueshiba Ueshiba Sensei, he's so balanced, he never loses his balance, and you're doing all of these fancy spinning techniques and all this, and Ueshiba Sensei said, that's not true. I'm off balance all the time, but I correct so quickly that you never even notice that I'm off balance. And this is really our goal, is to recognize when we are off balance and try to bring it back. Bring it back to center, and then recognize when we've gone too far in the other direction and bring it back. So, good luck. When you meditate tonight, just allow it to be what it is. Find where you're off balance and bring it back as quickly and as easily as you can. And I think most of you guys need to make it more like a game that you're playing with yourself, where you are not so intent on winning the game, you're just intent on the playing of it, where as soon as you recognize that you're off, you come right back to it and try to get your high score. And then apply this, because if you're only doing it in meditation, you're missing the point. If you're only doing it in your physical practice, you're missing the point. The point is to take this out into everything else that we do. And when we practice doing it here, then it will become a natural thing for us outside of our practice. And this is really the key. This is the way that we take our martial arts out into everyday life, is not just the physicality of it. Because if you're walking around beating people up, you're also missing the point. It is also the mental, spiritual, internal side of it. And so these things will start to show up naturally for us. This going in the direction of balance will show up naturally. And if it's not, then just set your intention at the beginning of the day. Today, I'm going to recognize where I'm off balance, and I'm going to move in the direction of balance. And do that as many times as you can, as often as you can, and try to stay there for as long as you can throughout the day. So that's what we're going to practice right now. Sit comfortably.